Yeah, so I wrote a story this week about Quill. This is a Series A company, but I'd never heard of them, and they had been operating in stealth, meaning they just weren't really making any public announcements. So very much early stage, and I wrote a little bit in what I believe is probably the first coverage of this company, which claims to be a better solution to workplace communication than Slack, which is the tool that basically all of us use today.
Yeah. So this is already raised a seed round. This is the Series A, and it was a $12.5 million A.
It was a $12.5 million A, and it was led by Index Ventures, which stood out to me because Index Ventures had been an investor in Slack since 2015. Certainly a venture capital firm that boasted its investment in Slack, as it should. Slack was obviously a very successful bet for pretty much all of the VCs in it. But the woman who led the round for Quill, Sarah Cannon is her name. She was a board observer at Slack. Now, I flagged this all in the story because I thought it was interesting. I did not share any opinion about whether this is a conflict of interest, whether these are competing investments, and whether it's, I don't know, morally acceptable that she was on the board and made that investment. So I'm curious, Alex, what you think and what your impressions are.
Well, it's 2019. Are there any rules whatsoever left in the game?
There really aren't.
I don't think so. Also, like Slack famously, as we covered on the show, extensively went through a direct listing like 6 months ago, give or take, somewhere in there. So presumably people have had the chance to exit their investment. Maybe they have, maybe they have not. But if they have exited, they don't own shares in a competing company.
It's interesting. And there was a lot of Twitter commentary after I posted this story. Some people saying that actually being a board observer is particularly interesting because to become a board observer, typically you actually have to request that because a board observer is different from a board member. You don't actually get to engage really in the conversation. You don't have any votes. You're sort of, by the name, as the name suggests, you're an observer. So you typically have to request that position. So somebody on Twitter was like, oh, okay, so Index requested this board observer seat, sat on Slack's board as, you know, they were getting ready to go to list. And then as they've listed, she's no longer on their board. But and then she goes and invests in a Slack competitor early stage and possibly uses a lot of what she had learned observing the board to mentor and kind of foster this company's growth.
I mean, that's just straight up gangster. I like that. But here's my question, though, because you and I have used Slack. We use it every single day of our life. You and I have both used Convo, which is a less known workplace communication service. I'm curious, and I don't think we know this yet, but we don't know where Quill, this new product, lands in between kind of a focus on threaded comments, which is kind of Convo, and a focus on IRC, which is kind of the Slack side of things.
Right.
So to me, like, I don't really know how direct of a competitor it's going to be for Slack itself.
Yeah. So this company was founded by a guy by the name of Ludwig Peterson, who was Stripe's former creative director, and he is a design focused person. His expertise is in design. He worked at OpenAI, which is Sam Altman's AI research firm, and he helped sort of design the first iteration of what they've built. The company is not up to speaking about what they've built just yet, but I did talk to Sam Altman, who was the former president of Y Combinator, kind of about what he's seen. He's actually looked at their product. I have not. He says that it is sort of like a no frills Slack. It is more efficient. And I mean, you've read the think pieces about how Slack has actually sabotaged workplace productivity because it is a distraction. And I don't think it's sabotaged workplace productivity. I think it's made people more productive and helps them collaborate. But there are inefficiencies in the product, and Slack has not done the best job. And I'm just sort of reiterating what other people say, but hasn't done the best job to continue developing the product in such a way that does minimize distractions. And I'm guessing that this company's thing is sort of like, we're Slack, but we won't give you 100 notifications a day. We'll give you just one.
I don't know if I could do a whole day with one notification because I'd miss so many things. Mm-hmm. But Sam Altman, who led the $2 million seed round into the company, has a perspective on this. He's made a bet based on it. Microsoft is part of this discussion, and I know we shouldn't spend forever on this one topic, but they have dichotomized internal communication to two chunks. Because if you recall, Microsoft bought Yammer back in the day, way in the pre-Slack era. Actually, Yammer was a TC Disrupt winner from like 14, 12, if I recall correctly. And they also have Teams, which competes with Slack. So they've cut communication into what they call, I'm trying to recall a conversation from a million years ago, inner ring and then outer ring. And they think that inner ring communication is more like Slack and Teams, and outer ring is more like Yammer. I would throw Convo in there as well. So to me, there's a distinction between what Quill might be doing and where Slack is. But I will say, with $12.5 million new dollars and a lot of hype, they have room to maneuver. Last thing, Kate, we've covered Tandem a bunch from the YC demo day.
We have.
Does this compete with Tandem at all, or are those distinct things?
That's a good question. If I remember correctly, Tandem integrates a bunch of different sort of productivity tools and will compete with more than I think just Slack. But because I feel like, so all the companies launching in 2019 or late 2019 sort of integrate a bunch of different things. Like they're like, oh, we're not only Slack, but we're also Airtable. And oh, we're also somehow like graphic design software too. And like, you can also use us instead of Google Docs. And that's fine. That's just sort of the era of startups. And, you know, we've talked about this before. We're seeing the bundling of all these different tools. And soon again, we'll see the debundling. It's just a cycle that we go through every few years. It's like bundle, debundle, bundle, debundle. Yeah,
I mean, we're watching this in slow motion with content right now. But between Tandem and Notion HQ and Quill and a bunch of other companies, it is kind of a golden explosion, or golden era style explosion of like early stage-ish productivity focused SaaS companies. And I'm really stoked to see which one's the best, because I'm sure we're going to end up using it down the road.
Yeah. And one final thought I will say is Slack was the first company to create a really, you know, great mainstream solution to workplace productivity, collaboration, chat software. But that doesn't mean it will be the winner in the end. Yes, it's gone public. That's great. But Microsoft launched its workplace communications tool years after Slack, and it actually has more users than Slack's does. And a startup, even if, you know, I mean, it's too early to say. We have no idea if Quill's any good. It could be crap. But a startup could be the one to sort of take that market. We just don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. We will be talking about this space, I'm pretty sure, at least once a month in perpetuity until all these companies eventually go public or die.